Good evening, everybody. Welcome to FMA Discussion. This is episode 447, and tonight is going to be more of a theme-oriented episode where we're going to discuss, should students teach, and if so, in what capacity? We're going to go over all the factors, time in, maybe at certain levels, quality control, and etc. And with me tonight, joining us will be Maestro Rich Parsons. And here we go, and he's coming up now. If you're watching, tell us where you're watching from. Smash that like button. We're just getting started. So thank you for doing this. Well, you heard the intro. So basically, should students teach? If so, what level? Before we get into that, though, let's get background from you and your FMA journey.
All right. So I'm one of the few people who started in FMA. I never trained officially or anywhere at all other than Filipino martial arts. I started in 1986 in modern arnis. Got my basic instructor certificate in 87. Still a color belt. Discussed different show for that. And then years later, got a black belt. Continued teaching, moving on. While I was still doing modern arnis, club also started picking up Balintawak in the mid to late 90s. I started in 98 and became one of the top senior students underneath Manung Ted Buat for that particular lineage. And then I was one of two that was asked to carry on the lineage for him. Not saying that anyone else can't teach, not saying anyone else can't do what they want to do, because he had no organization, no paperwork. I'm acknowledging that he asked me to do something officially. Okay. And then since the passing of Remy and later Ted, I've been teaching seminars for a while and camps, and traveled around, saw a bunch of people on my own dime to support the FMA community and also to cross-train and learn.
Nice. So did you find, we're going to get to the topic. I'm just fixing this camera.
Yeah.
Did you find parallel with the Balintawak and modern arnis? Because of my understanding, you know this better than me, but just for doing the interviews on here with modern arnis and Remy, I guess Balintawak was the last thing that he kind of trained in. Am I accurate in that?
Yeah, before he started forming modern arnis, that was one of the last ones he trained in. That is correct. Okay. He started with Moncall, then got moved up to Moringa, then from Moringa he went to Anchambaka.
He went around. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So the one of the beautifuls of being started with Moncall. Moncall is a left-hander, and so is Remy. So they were able to get the basics left-handed. And then when he switched to Moncall and started doing it right-handed, Moringa, doing it right-handed, he already had an understanding of it. And then they said, yeah, you can go train with Anchan. And so he would start training with Anchan.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and did you see, was it a good compliment, the two, when you got exposed to Balintawak from Ted Buat?
Yes. So one of the big things was in Balintawak there's a no, but while there is in modern arnis, did you get hit? The answer is no, so that was good, right?
Okay.
So on the Balintawak side, things might want to look at how you would have your backups, your preferred, and your standard. Okay. So as another topic discussed about 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, where you talked about being early, on time, or late.
Yeah, late, yeah.
So
I love that. Early, on time, late, before, during, after. Yeah. So
yes.
With going back to that, if I'm not mistaken, no groupings under that faction, correct?
Correct. So the rest of the industry refers to it as the original Anchan style. Unfortunately, many seem to think that is a superior stance. I respect Manung Bobby. I've met GM Nick Alisar. I've met a bunch of the others that are out there teaching the arts across this country, Germany, and Europe. Don't have any problems with any of them or their skill sets where they're at. I've written on the Wikipedia page numerous times that this subset exists, the one I train out of, but that the grouping methodology actually reaches people faster and quicker and in a larger. So the teaching methodology, to tie it back in, actually reaches people quicker and faster for numbers. Also, you can control quality across that with the instructor, as well as you can with the one-on-one instruction that would be done through the original mindset. So it's, when I say original, it means like the original. Well, you could say, all right, there's an original Model T, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's been a lot of vehicles since then, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean Model T was the best one ever made, right?
Yeah, it's the original Model T before the Chevy 350 was put into it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. You could say, look, there was a bronze knife, right? Well, is a bronze knife going to stand up to a modern day steel knife?
Right.
Back in the Middle Ages, steel cooled it or hardened in water versus oil, going to stand up to the modern steels? No. So it doesn't mean any slight or insight. It's a statement of discrimination, which means to disseminate, to draw a line between the two, right? Yes. Young Bobby, I would say, is a friend of mine. I can't see him as often as I'd like. Whenever we do meet, he always takes time to just have a conversation with me and him alone.
Yeah, my interactions with him have been nothing but positive. So interesting. All right. So, but now, all right. So status quo before we get into the topic at hand tonight. You're still training both, still teaching both?
Yes. The Benta Walks, I will teach singles in small little sequences that I've got set up that work well at camps and seminars. And then the Moderniste is usually my classwork.
Was your class?
So the Benta Walk is the one I'll do privates, and or when people ask for it at a seminar, I'll teach the singles, but they're not getting the full essence of the abecedario. They're learning techniques and specialty insights from the Benta Walk system, but they're not getting all the base for it. So I'm not saying they're not learning. I'm not saying it's not helpful. It's just they're taking a piece and taking it home with them for their own system versus learning Benta Walk.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. Nice. And we got folks jumping in. Folks, if you're watching, tell us where you're watching from. If you have questions, put them on the right-hand side, and I will get to them. We're going to jump right into it now. Should students be able to teach? And we got Eric O'Brien watching, Terry Joven, Danny Terrell, and we got Amog, John Couscous, and GM Dan Anderson just checked in. All right. So, overall generic question, I'm going to ask, should students be able to teach and why? And then we'll go through all the factors. So, in your opinion, just as a generic answer, should students be able to teach and why?
Yes, they should be able to teach. There's some qualifications to that, obviously. And the reason why is if they just practice it in class, then they really aren't making it their own. But as soon as a month goes by and someone else comes in and you've instructed everybody and then they work with them and they are the senior student, even though they may have no rank at all, they still are teaching them. They're still working with them one-on-one. They're still helping them with what they understand. Now, they might be wrong, but it's their best approach at that time. And then the quality control is done by the instructor by coming by and saying, hey, that's good, but this is actually what I meant. So can we work on this instead? So I didn't negatively tell them they were wrong. I reinforce that, or sometimes they might actually be doing the counter automatically. So you'll say, oh, that comes later, right? We want to work on this for timing, or we want to work on this for a basic, and you'll get by this relatively quick once we know that you understand these concepts. So yes, the instructor quality control over the students and then the students working with other students, I think from day one is helpful.
I just think it compounds the information more. I know, like when I was given the latitude to teach, I just know I got a better understanding of it, relaying it to others. And I saw some of the nuances more clearly when I started teaching because I had to pay particular attention because I'm giving this information up to somebody else. And I was attentive to that. Like, I want to make sure they're getting it correct. And so, but I was also mindful um, and I wanted to be careful in that regard. I imagine if you had somebody who just didn't care, obviously wouldn't be the best choice of the person having teaching. But I took it to heart to make sure what they were getting was correct. And
Yeah,
so
that's right.
yeah. We got more folks jump in. We got Miguel Ruby, who's okay. I'm gonna let you answer this from Renee.
So Renee, the big difference between Benta walk and Benta run is the walk is what you cook your stir fry in, and the run is when you have to go outside to pick it up, and you have to run to pick it up.
I'm just so shocked that he would say something like you would ask something like that. I just, I mean, gosh, that surprises me.
I know.
And in case anybody needs a visual, we always have this on hand. But all right, let's get into metrics to determine. In other words, some systems they just don't allow it. Like when I was talking to you before we went live, like in a mock, for instance, you're either a student, you're a trainer, or instructor. You know what I mean? That's just the way it is, and it works well for Tom. I mean, it's practically bulletproof. I mean, it's a smooth operating engine, but flip the coin, you got Remy who like advocated folks to go out there and teach it and do it and spread the art and that, and which I'm sure you heard him say directly probably to you in that. And so he seemed to be a little more lenient or a little more with much more latitude than others. And it seems like it's paid dividends for him as far as the spread of the art. Am I accurate in that? Sounds correct?
Absolutely. So for Renee, Remy would go out and have people teach. And he would ask them to take it back to their schools. Mm-hmm. Because if they liked it as well, then they might bring them in for a seminar, or they might come back to the seminar they were currently at, but bring more people. So not only was it for his passion of the art, but he was thinking about long-term, everything, turnover of students, getting the system out there, right? On the other hand, my other instructor, Manung Ted, he basically had the same thing, similar to what the Amok does, which means you're a student, you're a trainer / teacher, and then you're on your own, right? So I took some heat when I taught one of the first seminars for Benta Walk. And some people were like, oh, you're going to get in so much trouble from Manung Ted. He's going to be so mad at you. And I said, look, I asked him up before I agreed to it. I asked, right? And he asked how I was going to teach it. I explained the methodology I was going to use. And he said, okay, I agree with that. And so it was going to be a small group at Penn, about 10 to 15 students with their instructor there or whatever. But, participants to the seminar. And I would show them, like in the original methodology of Benta Walk, one-on-one with one, and the rest would watch. Then I would let them practice it with each other and go around and help them. Mm-hmm. And then I would come back and correct or add to it. And in that, which is pretty much a standard seminar format, right? But by explaining it in detail to him, and I think his trust in me, he allowed me to teach that. He did tell others that you could start teaching with a study partner. And then others, he told them that you could have a training group or small training group and then a training group. So that's where that trainer spot came in, right? Yeah. And then the instructor, which was, yep, you're okay. Go do what you need to do.
Yeah. Which we're going to get into all that. And folks, if you're watching, you have questions regarding this, we're going to bring up all these factors. Please put them in there. You might think of something that we didn't think of. So please,
Absolutely.
feel
And
free to
these are two
comment.
opinions here, guys.
Yeah.
And you guys comment in, and we'll continue to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, just because this is a theme episode doesn't mean we're correct in everything we're going to be saying here. I mean, you guys might think of something that we just didn't even consider. Okay, the metrics. So past experience, like in your case, you had past experience, so obviously that's a factor. Rank, I'm sure, is a factor. What level are you even able to teach to? Like, you know what I mean? I know some systems do that. For instance, like if you're a level 2, if a system does levels and you're a level 2, I know some of them will give, okay, you could teach up to level 1. You know what I mean? I know some guys do that. So what do you think about all that, as far as just some of the metrics to determine within whatever your faction, your system, that as far as that, whether it's based on levels, years, obviously your interaction, classroom interaction, with other people. And let's, I guess, determine that before we get into as far as the setting and what levels you can do and the formats and et cetera.
So in the Monarnese side of thing, where there's ranks and a curriculum that we had in the Flint schools, and then we even would sit down and adjust things over time and say, okay, this is a little too much for one belt. But that was the instructor level to try to make it easier for the students, not necessarily changing the total amount to black belt, but just re-leveling things that seemed out of place. So the student should be able to help anybody with any of the concepts that they've already learned. So if you're a brown belt and you know certain forms and you know certain striking patterns and styles, you should be able to help when, after it's been instructed in class and you break off in pairs and they start to work, and you should hear that senior student, be the green belt, blue belt, brown belt, telling the white belt or yellow belt, no, get your tips of your sticks up. Yes, you can hit my hands, but then I'm going to hit yours and I got better accuracy, right? So let's not hurt each other. So they work on class safety, right? And then they can say, oh, okay, all right. Nope, you're doing that and there's no power in it, right? Your blocks aren't going to work. So you need to move like this. That reinforces, as Danny Terrell says there, they will learn a much higher level through teaching, right? So they will get that. They will be able to make it their own. And then when you reinforce that in class by calling them up and say, hey, what did you say to the guys? Well, I said this. See, this is just a color belt, and he's learning this. And someone else asked me at a later date, when they were a brown belt, visited some relatives out of state, that a cousin, big family reunion, who trained. So then he went and spent some time with the group he was training with. And they're like, you're just a brown belt? You're teaching this wonderfully. And he's like, oh. And then when he came back, I explained to him, I said, yes, I've been teaching you to be a teacher all along, versus waiting until you're a black belt to then approach the concept.
Which to me is, if you look at it from a outside looking in or a broad scope, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? However, though, there's the aspect, of course, we're going to get into the whole aspect of quality control. And then that kind of, that flips that coin. You know what I mean? So I guess, yeah. But what you're mentioning is like the whole thing with, the upper belts assisting the lower belts. So while they're insisting, maybe it wasn't, made clear to them verbally, like, hey, you're going to be teaching this person, but just by the fact of them assisting them, they're gaining that experience of when that day does come, and they call upon them maybe to help you teach a class regularly,
Right. And so one of the things that I've also done is to say, hey, Joe, get in front of class. Tim, get in front of class. Whoever, lead us through this, right? And then you join the ranks. And then you could ask the difficult questions that other white belts ask, right? And when they don't understand, you say, it's okay. It's okay to say, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
You just tell them, I'm going to go find out.
Yeah,
and
right.
Then you go talk to your instructors or your friends or your mentors to get those answers, right? Yeah. And so that gives them confidence of being in front of a small group of people, right? so that the first time they've got 10 people staring at them or 20 people.
I know.
Yeah, they're not going, what's my name, right? So,
Oh, and we all had that moment, like that first time. Like I remember my first Zoom, like seminar, or my first. I tell you, man, it was like, yeah. It's like you are the center of attention, and you're looking around, and you can't look at like I learned. Don't look at everybody's face, man. Just kind of make a broad like this, because you start looking at people's faces, then you get you're off in somewhere else, and before you know it, you don't even know what the hell you're saying. At least with me.
So one of the quality control things that Remy did would be to black belts could promote color belts, right? But if you wanted to get a black belt, you either had to bring them into your school or you had to go to a camp or someplace where he was hosting a test. So that was a way to get some type of quality control.
So let me just back up on that. So let's back up in the lower and the other belts before black belt. So in other words, here's my example to you, I guess, from what I guess, and just the protocol, I guess I'm interested in the protocol, what Remy would do. So green belt. So I'm guessing green belt's kind of in the middle.
Yeah. So it was like white, yellow, green, blue, brown, and there was a couple.
Okay. So green, blue. All right. Kind of. Yeah. Okay. So if you were a green or blue belt, and you saw Remy maybe when you brought him in, or you saw him at the bigger camps, whatever, you had the green light to go back and teach everything beyond previous to that belt that you were currently at.
Actually, you could teach everything you learned at the camp,
as well as whatever belt you are and whatever you accumulated up to that belt.
So let's say you learned Form 5, which was requirement for a black belt, because they went over forms that camp in detail, right? Well, then you could share that with everybody else as well.
Interesting. So he wasn't so much based on curriculum per belt. It was what you were exposed to.
Remy was more exposure, yes. In our school,
that's interesting, because some is going to be like dialed into like levels. Okay, you got level information because you're level 2 now. You can just give level 1, but you're saying if it's exposure, that opens up a whole bigger dynamic as far as their latitude of what the students can do based on just simply seeing something out of camp.
Right. So that's why Remy would say, okay, let me back up. Many people had relationships with Grandmaster Remy Amador Priestess. Some people called him Professor. Some people called him Grandmaster. Some people just called him Sir. I spent time with him, and while we were drinking a beer, he told me, they might think I'm your grandfather if you say Grandmaster. So when we're off the mats and we're just talking, I'm Remy. So I got into the habit. Even my friends who were seniors or black belts as well, same or lower rank, you would always say sir. On the floor, show the proper respect. While we're just having conversations, my term of Remy is not necessarily a sign of disrespect or over familiarization. It was an agreement that he requested of me.
I was Robert.
Okay. All right. So, yes, the question I believe was specifics versus what you're exposed to. And he liked the exposure because to him, if you caught part A, but you didn't understand part B, and you took part A back, great.
Right.
So if you took part D of something else back, right, then you were exposing people to pieces that you understood. So it reinforced what parts you understood, so you were happier. And then also, hopefully, you were bringing in other happy students.
Emphasis on other happy students.
Yes.
Yeah. Or other just in general.
Right.
No, that's interesting because the reason why I kind of focused on that when I was coming up with the outline tonight, and from our test run, like that didn't dawn on me. Like, okay, like I was kind of with the vision of teaching what based on levels or curriculum, but exposure, that's a whole different dynamic. I mean, and
So I've heard this
interesting.
before. No disrespect to Bruce Lee and others of the JKD realm, but Remy's approach was very JKD-ish. You absorbed what you could absorb, right? And then you moved on.
And moved
Um,
on.
for testing, he wanted you to have a baseline curriculum, eventually a black belt. That's where everything needed to be settled on. Some of the color belts at the camps would be a little bit more fluctuating. Like, oh, they're really good at this other stuff, but they're learning this stuff, so
Yeah.
we'll give them this belt. Whereas if he came into schools, there was usually a very set curriculum, and if you didn't meet that curriculum, you didn't get those ranks.
We got a question in here from Danny. Of course, it must be upon exposure. How can one pass on something if they haven't been exposed to? Yeah, no, I'm not denying that. I'm just more or less establishing lines between established curriculum and what is a camp per
Right.
se.
So if a blue belt learns a brown belt technique, can they teach the brown belt technique?
Yeah.
Is what.
Yeah. Great answer. Oh, we got Rocky here. So he's saying, great answer, Rich. The mat is different from in person. After we saw Remo Williams, that was what I called him when we hung out. Oh, Remo. Okay. Remo. Okay. I got it. Okay. Remo. All right. So, regardless of, I guess, camps, whatever, I don't think that's too important. In other words, in your opinion, I'll ask you this, and I guess I'll kind of give you mine. Like, what do you look for just determining somebody that you think would be suitable to teach, maybe in your absence, or maybe he's somebody that goes to your seminars, he's out of state, but God, like this guy could run a training group, or I guess, what do you personally, I guess, look for?
Well, the leadership quality, right? Are other people already coming to them to get an answer?
Are they just screaming at people in the corner?
Right. Are they doing more than just taking notes? Notes are great, but if they're only taking notes and barely practicing it, then I don't know what they've absorbed. But if I can see that they've absorbed it, and a second or third time you see them, it's a little bit more obvious. But if you're doing it from the first time, then it's about that first impression, that how they project themselves, how they operate, and how they carry themselves, right?
No, that's yeah. Folks, if you got stuff to add to this, please comment. Some of the things I look for, like I have a couple guys that under Play Tech that are kind of running things in different states. I look for everything you mentioned there. I mean, yeah, but overall ambition. Like I look at their previous track record, and so in other words, I don't do this every student, but I look at ones that maybe have a name or they've been around the block, and I look at their track record and I look at their associations with previous stuff like that, and it gives me a feel like they could run something. They got experience. They're known for dealing with people, from different styles and that, and they can interact well and make things blend, work, in harmony. So I also look at that, but the stuff you mentioned is just as valuable and important. I mean, if they don't have good interaction or leadership qualities, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's important as well.
Right. And so, I mean, to me, it's a little bit more than just, are they a black belt somewhere else or a trainer, an instructor somewhere else? Because they still may not be the best person, or they may just
assuming like they kind of pass the personality.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you find out they don't got stuff going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, when I was in college, while I was training early, a young lady got hired. I did the interview. She was a 16-year-old in high school. And I said, what do you want out of this job? Right. I was just looking for standard responses. And she goes, I want your job. I said, okay. She goes, no, I'm dead serious. And I said, so am I. I said,
So you're
we'll see how well
hired. I mean, think about that, like 16,
yeah,
articulating that.
right. And so I said, I know you want to do stuff. I know you want to succeed. So we'll try you out in a lot of different positions all summer long. And then if you meet all of our criteria, you'll be one of them that we keep over the winter. And then next summer, you might be one, like a day shift assistant manager, not the night shift assistant manager. The night shift assistant manager also had to do bouncing. And so, it was an arcade, bumper boats, go-karts, pizza place, right?
Yeah.
So you could get all types during the day.
And so interesting.
But so later, she graduated. She went off to college. Chad. When she came back, she said she didn't realize how difficult it really was, because when she tried saying she had been a manager at 17 and 18 over the summer, no one took her seriously, right? Because of their age. So that's why I don't look at just age. I don't look at that. She asked for it, and I said, okay, I'll test you and make sure you're ready. And then when you're ready, go get it.
Right.
So the same thing in the martial arts, right? It's like, yeah, I think you can be a team leader. Let's go for it, right? So,
folks, if you're watching, add in what else you think would make you determine whether you would have somebody help teach, what criteria would you look for as far as selecting somebody to teach, run a training group, anything of the sort. Like, we're just curious. I'm generally curious to see what some of you teachers here look for that maybe we didn't point out or whatever. Okay, so, upon determination, like you selected this person, and assuming they're working out, it's a mutual agreement. Everybody knows, everybody knows what's put on the table. Okay. It's not setting, I guess, standards, format. What can they do? What they can't do? How many? What point are they allowed to teach up till? You know what I mean? Where's some? So let's go with because obviously this could vary depending on everything. Like for instance, I guess did Remy? It wasn't based on numbers. Like if you had 30 people in your room, he didn't care.
He didn't care.
He didn't care. Okay.
Whereas when I'm Ted with his couple of distant students and or the locals who might travel like I did an hour or so, excuse me. If he told you about a training partner, then it was one, right? He meant a training partner. Okay. And then if he saw the proper increase by you being able to do things better because you started working with people and understanding it more, and you also improve in other areas, then later you'd be told you could have a small training group, 2, maybe 3. Because now you're starting to get to the point where if the person calls in sick, you don't want to lose your training for that week, right? So now they want, his mindset was, yes, we want to keep you improving or at least maintaining each week going through that process. And then with a training group was basically 5 or so, but it was meant to be, and they had to understand that you weren't a certified instructor, you were just working with them, and it was just a training group. If they wanted to get better, they needed to go through a certified instructor. Now, the certification, though, was you can teach. That's
right. Yeah.
Simple as it was, right? So
Interesting. So, Ted, few people. Remy, I don't
It's
care if
meant,
you got 40
yeah.
people in your room. You got this up at the camp. You're good to go. Share with them and all that. Okay. What is your lens on levels? Like, in other words, like, it's obviously Remy had a very open caveat. I mean, like, it didn't matter. Like, if you could be a blue belt, for instance, if you were exposed to a black belt form, you could show that in your group class when you went back to Colorado, for instance, right?
Yes.
And there. However, though, it's really based on that level. So I can live in Wyoming. It doesn't matter really what I was exposed to at the camp. However, I can only teach that level one, regardless, like what was given me that camp. Could have been level 6 stuff, and all that. Like, what's your opinion on that? Where it's more level based and what level you're at?
So based upon history, investigation, most arts, be it martial arts, be it a skilled trade, it's only good for 2 generations after the person that makes their name. So you've got the first generation, then you got the second generation. After that, if you don't have some type of certification, some type of documentation, then that person has to reestablish their name and their reputation as a senior person across the industry, right? So to avoid that for the future, I added levels to our Benta walk and broken it down. So has one of the other instructors that was authorized by TED to carry on. We're not exactly the same for the levels, but we're close enough. So I have some technical levels and I have some instructor levels. This is where we differ. So my technical levels is for those who are just pure athletes. They're phenomenal guys. They can go fight, right? They can learn it. But all they do is yell at you and go, no, harder, faster. And they don't tell you, no. You move your body like this. You cock your hip here. You put your weight on your knee here.
So not so much on the technical. Okay.
Right. But they have these attributes. They see it. They can reproduce it. So that you shouldn't hold them back from learning, right?
Yeah, right.
So I got that technical path so that they can go straight to the top if that's where they want to go. Now, the I path, the instructor path, you can only teach officially what you're approved for. So if you're an I1, you can teach the first group level stuff. If you're an I2, you teach the I. If you're an I5, you can teach that. If you're an I6 or 7, well, then you can teach whatever you want. But now you're also able to guide your I4s and I5s for your improvement because your skill sets are getting even better, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And you're able to affect the T5s to get maybe into becoming better instructors too.
But yeah, I mean, but you kind of have it laid out as far as protocol where it's pretty clear what they can do and what they can't do. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's a gray area, We got Rocky here. So Rocky's saying, in my opinion, my honest opinion, I want somebody that can analyze techniques, speak to the student, and not talk down to the student. Someone who will make learning fun, not painful. That can come later if the student decides to go down that route. And everyone trains for a different reason, and who you appoint to teach needs to know. Yeah, fair enough. That's from Rocky. Then we got Emmett. What kind of odd question, but how do you convince someone you believe should be teaching to start to? No, that's a great question. To start teaching, especially if they personally feel they aren't ready to start that journey just yet. That's a great question from Emmett.
So can I comment on Rocky's first before we get to Emmett's?
Sure.
So, hey, Terrell, to add an example to Rocky's point, and this is something I brought up to you that we'll bring up later, but I'll do it now because I think it fits. You could have a very senior master, grandmaster, and they're not right to teach the white belts, okay, or the yellow belts.
No, we're doing right.
Yeah, because they will make it painful. They're like, no, your toe is off by a millimeter.
Yeah, and you're gonna be
Weight's
spending
not
that
right, and then you're
20
standing in
minutes.
the same spot. Your muscles are twitching from cramps, right? And an hour later, you're just like, just let me out of here. I'm never coming back, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe if you've been in it for a long time and you're adjusting those little things for people because that's where the level they're at, that makes good sense. But when you expect perfection from your students, then it causes a learning issue, right? So to learn properly, people need to fail, okay? And they need to be able to fail in a positive manner, right? So, hey, we had a quiz today, or here's your homework, right? Boom. Yeah, you got a few wrong. Let's go over those, right? Let's work on the ones that everybody failed. And if everybody's missing the same question, then let's look at that question and why they missed it. But if it's spread across, then let's look at that for the individuals and cover why they were missing it. It could be a concept that they misunderstood. It could be a key critical core value, whatever the thing may be. So yeah, I think that finding a person who can reach the student. Now, this is something else. You could have two students, two instructors, the exact same distance from your house, the exact same traffic, the exact same time, exact same floor plans, the exact same students. They're all clones of each other. Got it.
Right.
But one of the instructors you connect with, the other one you don't. Okay. If you don't connect with the instructor, it's going to be a lot harder to learn.
Yeah, to fully reach your potential if you're not even gelling with the guy that's in front of you. That's a tough equation. That's tough. Right. Yeah. All right. We got GM Terrell. Hey, and we got GM Lex from Maryland. Awesome to see him. Nothing but wonderful things about him. All right. So here's here. Okay, Emmett's question again. So, which I think is a great question. How do you convince someone you believe should be teaching to start teaching, especially if they personally feel that they aren't ready to start that journey just yet?
So when I'm in a large classroom, that's why I put people in front of a room.
And find out.
Right. I'm like, no, go teach it. Yeah. It's part of your requirements now. Go teach. And they're like, really? And I go, yeah. I don't care if you fail. Just learn from it, right? And if they learn that they're struggling with it, but after a while they realize, go, look, let's all get in a circle. We're okay. But now when you're in front of the class and there are those lines in front of you, there's a problem. The same number of people are still in the same room.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh. So you can try to overcome by building up their confidence that it's okay to make that mistake.
Yeah.
One of the things I did as a youth in junior high was I did bowling. And one of the things that I asked, what do normal presidents of the league do? Because I got elected president. And the coach said, well, the presidents usually do the announcements, but most kids your age don't want to do that. And I said, I'll do them, right? I stuttered. Not a lot, but just occasionally. So it didn't matter if it was an S or a T or a D. As soon as I did it, I'd go, da-da-da-da, that's all, folks. And then continue with the sentence. Okay. The whole place would bust out laughing. Okay. But I was laughing too.
Okay.
And then we kept moving and I kept reading the rest of the announcements, reading the awards. And people are like, Rich, but you stuttered. And I said, yes. So I made fun of myself. Yeah. And everybody laughed. So I could get over it. And then after a while, the stutter stopped.
Yeah, because you were able to ease down, calm down, relax, click in, and right. Yeah, absolutely. And we got yeah. So that was a great question, Emmett. All right, some overteach, some. Oh my gosh, we're just flying in right now. Hold on, I gotta back up. All right, some overteach, some expect far too high of a level. Struggle and failure is an important component to learning. Yeah, absolutely. This is from Chad. Remy told me, Chad, you must teach.
That's
And
correct.
that was it. All right, we got Rocky's a long one here. Okay, actually, you know what? I'm going to read from here. It's actually it's pretty here. I'm gonna because it's okay. Here we go. And then we got all right. Remy's method of getting people to teach anyone, even if it's only one technique, he believed you would get better showing anyone. And since everyone learns different, it helps you learn. It helps you teach too if everybody learns it. Okay. It seems to have worked. He spread the art more than anyone. Can't deny that. His
We
old
said that
friend
earlier,
GM,
Rocky. It's very
yeah,
insightful. I agree.
his old friend GM Teddy had a number of Balintawak students here in the States that trained for years that never made it to Quintada. Only a few, less than a handful did, and still haven't. Rich, I believe, has, and a few others that did have one thing in common: they taught. It seems Remy was onto something. Yeah, I can't argue that. Anything you want to chime in on that before I go to Maestro Ray?
Thank you for the comment, Rocky. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, that was that. I mean, right, and yeah, that's another thing too. That's a good point. Like, if in other words, Remy would tell you to go back and teach, regardless if if you were subletting, you had a full time school in the garage, whatever. But teaching when you got different kinds of students who learn different ways. Maybe visual, maybe tactile, maybe putting on a board or whatever the case may be. I mean, that's going to make you a better teacher just because you might not recognize in the beginning or be able to articulate the different people you got in front of you. But overall, down the road, you got to be seeing that.
So while I was coming up through the ranks and I was teaching in class, or when July would happen and all the black belts would take it off and they'd say, Rich, you got a key. You can open up the club. You're in charge. Not a problem. Well, some people would say, I forgot where I was going. What were you saying there, Dean?
Oh, I was talking about how folks, like, in other words, if you were given the permission to go back and teach, like, let's use Remy, for instance, and you have these different students in front of you, and everybody kind of learns differently depending on,
Yes, that's where I was going. Thank you. So I would say things, and then people would say, Rich, you're an engineer. Can you use different vocabulary, different words for us? And so I would say yes. So then I got in the habit of saying things 2 or 3 times, right? Whatever came off the top of my head, if it was, yes, we want to take this, we want to do a proper torsional alignment of the arm here, which means we're going to take the handle of the hand on the thumb and we're going to torque it or turn it. And so I was explaining it with different terms, different references, different analogies, and people seem to understand better. I also understood that when I demonstrated, I would face them. Well, it's mirror. Sometimes I would face parallel with them. So they could
I do that a lot.
And then I would turn 90 degrees so that they could see it as well. And then there's always that one guy that goes, I just don't understand. And then say, I need to feel it. And I'd say, well, come on up.
I need to feel it. Yeah, some people are tactile. They need to see it and feel it. Yeah.
Right. So one guy at one seminar was very frustrated with me. After my session, it was a camp. After my session was over, he came up to me and he says, I'm not dumb. And I'm like, I never thought anybody here was. And he goes, why do you have to tell me 3 times? And I went, oh, well, you understand that you got it the first time? Yeah. These guys over here got it the second time. And this newbie over here who'd never trained before and just walked in and went to a camp cold, blind, the day before, signed up for it. You're like, yeah. I didn't reach here until the 3rd or 4th time. And they're like, oh. I go, so yeah, you got it the first time.
Yeah, right. And then you need to have the talk with them and see. What we got here from my GM Ray? Folks, by the way, he's got a sale going on his stuff there. I got to be checking out his night program Miller stuff. Dos Manos. Be selecting. All right. I tell people who are competent, if you pass on your knowledge, you may just save someone's life.
That is true.
Can't argue that. Lost thoughts. So glad I'm not the only one with senior moments. It's okay, Rich. All right, Rocky.
It's just sometimes.
It's just sometimes. I seem to have them a few times a day. It's okay, Rocky. We're here for you. Matter of fact, we're going to be starting a little club here for you folks. All right. Danny Terrell, a picture is worth 1,000 words. A feel is worth 10,000. Yeah, right. You're feeling it, seeing it, feeling it, smelling it, right? Okay. So we got levels.
To that point, what? So that's one of the benefits of the one-on-one instruction with the original Blintawalk, right? Because you always felt it, right? That's one of the benefits of dealing with privates, right? You're there. Even if it's a semi-private with two of you there, you're feeling it every time.
Yeah.
As demonstrated on you, right? So if that is your learning methodology and you're not getting it, then you may need to reach out to the instructor and become the volunteer uki and or be ask for private lessons.
Or, right. Yeah. Okay.
So you were saying levels.
Okay. So yeah, we were kind of touching upon levels, how some folks, they, like based on their, in other words, based on their structure, their format, as far as whether they have levels or, there are no levels, you just get it. If it takes you 5 years to get the whole system, then, whatever. But now we have, okay, let's look at study. So you mentioned study group and all that. And like, for instance, Ted only wanted a few folks in there, right? And that.
Right. So there was a group of us in Flint who were already training together in Modern Arnis, and we were being added in as openings occurred. So our study group was already built. So there was no discussion around the size there. But I know with some of the others that he had worked with, they said, yes, you can have a training partner. And then 6 months or so later, they would say, yeah, you can have a small study group, no more than 2 or 3, right? Yeah. And then later they'd be told, oh, you can have a study group. And one of them, it was like, yes, you can start teaching people after that. Okay. So that was his progression of getting you comfortable working with people. And it was also his progression of helping you learn. He didn't require it. He just told you could.
Back to the study group, was it made very clear that the person designated to do the study group is the only one that was teaching, and the students that were there, participants, no shape or way or form, were they able to go out there and teach or share?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So that was pretty much, that was solidified. Okay, all right. Yeah. Okay, all right. We got something from Phil. It's good to have different teaching methods for different people at different levels. You yourself have given great experience to newbies and experienced practitioners. As not everybody knows, it's all most experienced students sometimes add to what they already know, even from a different perspective. Yeah, right. They're more advanced. I mean, that's very true, Phil.
And to his point, which is very good, I've seen black belts, first, second, third, go, you know what? I'm going to teach these white belts that I've got this way. And you go, okay, why? And they go, well, why do they need these big circles? And I go, for safety. Because they're learning. They don't have the sensitivity. They go from 0 to 900. And you only need to go to 60, right? And then, so when you do that, people's joints and arms get out of socket, get broken, legs get hurt, right? I go, so if you get, as Wally J and Remy both stated, if you give your opponent room to move, then they have a way to learn with you. If you don't give them a room to move and they aren't already trained, then they're going to get hurt. because
they're just they're getting hurt. Yeah.
So
I like that. No, that was okay. So training group, okay, versus privates. Like, all right, so if a person's designated to do a training group, again, I think this goes back to levels. In other words, training group versus teaching privately. Again, it doesn't sound like Ted would allow. I'm just using it as an example for reference. Ted would not allow somebody that's running a training group would he allow them to teach privately?
No. So with his term with the private lessons was more of a, now they're your student.
Right. So that means you're instructor, you have students, yes. Now you can do privates, but training group, okay, no privates. Okay. Got it. All right. We have now this whole thing, which adds a whole nother dynamic to teaching, and whether or not, and then this adds more protocol as far as who can and who can't. The whole thing with online teaching, in other words. So let me give you some examples what some folks do. Like for instance, folks that run training groups, they're able to teach their training in physical. They're in a room, wherever they meet, what night. However, though, cannot do online. And I kind of agree with that. You know what I mean? Like online teaching, that should be, you're seasoned. You know what I mean? There's such a different dynamic, what to look for and all that. So, couple folks I know, yeah, they can run training groups. No teaching online. That's only for the head instructor. And that. What's your opinion on
that? If two friends want to get together and share information and they're working with each other, yeah, I think they can learn a little. But if they're trying to follow the curriculum and learn the curriculum as it was taught, sharing it online is going to be very difficult until they get to a certain point.
To a certain point, I agree. And obviously there's going to be exceptions. You know what I mean? But as a general rule,
and you might have, like a brown belt, who's been training in 4 years out of a 5 years system to black, right? And yeah, they're going to teach you 1 through 12 and some basic blocks on a Zoom. Yeah, that's okay, right? Because they're teaching you some basic motions that you can try to practice on your own. But the quality control needs to be there, which means eventually you need to see them to make sure that, they actually were blocking, they actually were striking, right?
That's another thing too. It's to like what level online. So let's just say they did have, again, then you run into like, are they just showing the basics? Which when they're doing online, even the most senior guys, generally speaking, they're showing the basics online. They're not. I mean, unless it's a core group they meet with every week online during COVID, and they're now they can go a little deeper. But assuming that's not the case, let's just say you're trying to you're just doing an online seminar. I mean, my guess is you're going to be showing basics anyhow.
Exactly. So, and this is for Renee, Datu Tim.
Where is Datu?
When he does his remotes for seminars and in camps, right? And particularly when things are starting to open back up, and but the border closed between Canada and the U.S., and he has a large Canadian presence as well. So when we were setting up and he had the test cameras engaged on all the sites connected with him, I went and found my marks. I went to the floor and picked the little scratch spots that I knew I needed to stand at to not only teach the people in person, but to teach the people who are on camera.
I got you. Yeah, okay.
Because one of the things I've seen with cameras, they'll set it up and then they'll go back to the main floor and they'll be 40 feet away, right?
Yeah.
So you can't see any detail. Or they will then have 3 people standing covering half of the technique because they want to watch too, right? So you need a producer.
Mm.
And that producer needs to know, yep, here's your marks, here's your things, here's your feeds, this is where you need to be, right? And then, you can direct the instruction.
It's just a lot. It's just such a different dynamic. Like, and particularly, like, in other words, when I do online seminars, I'll have people physically there, local students as well as online. And you got to know how to orchestrate that room. You know what I mean? You're making everybody inclusive. You're making sure you're giving attention to the folks that are, in physically, as well as the people online. And it's a dynamic. I mean, I'm telling you, it's not easy. Sometimes I prefer when I just do online, I don't have students there because it's a added dynamic that you got to, and so what I'm really getting at is somebody who's not seasoned in teaching a student, they're just not going to be, that's going to be a hard dynamic for them to really get and do, you know what I mean? Regardless of what they're teaching. So folks, if you're watching, what do you guys think about online, students online teaching? Just be curious to hear some of you guys' thoughts on that. Okay. So online, that's Instructor. I agree. Unless there's this guy, maybe he's not Instructor. He's a very close to becoming one. He's just showed incredible demonstration of teaching and relaying of information. I mean, obviously, that would, they're out there, but that would be somebody generally has been around for a while, probably has already been teaching in a physical setting with you or without you or on or a study group. I mean, so definitely the online thing is.
If you're already familiar with the curriculum or you're familiar with the system with SumRank, and you're learning a new variation of something, but you know all the letters, it's just a new word, then I think the Zoom or online working can work well, right? If you're totally new, there's only so much you can get out of it, right?
Agreed.
If you've got a base somewhere else, or particularly if you've got a base in the same art, right? So like one of the things Ted would say is, yes, Rich, there's Juan, Juanito, and another Rich. And I'd be like, okay. He goes, Juan is just the guy on the street, knows a few things, right? So all these techniques work. Juanito knows stuff, but he's kind of parallel. Maybe not the same art, but close enough that you're not going to get away with some of those other things. You got to be tighter and you got to be better for this. And then there's the other Rich. And that other Rich, and he knows everything you know plus one technique, and he won't share that one technique with you. So therefore, you got to be prepared to always be surprised.
Right, the surprise aspect element. Yeah,
right.
That's true. In which students are, for those who are instructors in other arts, but are student in a different art, that person may have the capability to teach on the line. Yeah, I think that's fair. You know, I think that's fair.
They already know how to teach and they know how to present.
Yeah.
It's like I'm switching from physical chemistry to organic chemistry. You're already a chemist. You already know how to do it.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Maybe somebody that's real seasoned in Marnice and he's doing really well in the beginning PTK stuff. Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. All right. Quality control. Kind of back to that.
In other words, on the remote, I think people need to check in physically.
That's what I mean. Like, that's what I'm alluding to. Like, for instance, people that are running training groups, like, yeah, exactly. Like, there's got to be some connection, whether you're seeing them online, you get a visualization of what they're doing. I mean, obviously that being better than nothing. If it's somewhere that's close by, they bring you in, and you're kind of just watching a small group class or whatever the setting may be. But yeah, I agree. As far as quality control, there's got to be something, right?
Yeah, you want to be able to feel, smell, taste their techniques, right?
Mm.
You want to get that full sensory impact of what they're doing and how they're doing it. Because on the Zoom, you may not see that they're rocked back on their heels, right? And they're not planning on stepping back from that point because where they're already moving, that's just where they feel comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason why they say boxers, you got them on your heels, right?
Yeah. Agreed. And we got surprise routine. Yes, surprise. So
but I bet he's probably talking about a knife surprise.
yeah, he's crazy Eric. Yeah. Now, promotion. So in other words, some systems will promote based on the ability to teach. In other words,
Yes.
which I think makes sense. In other words, if they're running a successful group in a different state, whatever, and you're seeing that, the feedback is great. You've gone there, you're seeing them, how they teach, how they command the floor. Students are getting it. The transmission information is flawless. Some ranking is based on that. What say you about that?
So up through black belts, pretty much there's a curriculum for techniques usually. In the one that I teach in the Modern East, I do have some teaching requirements. It's minimum in front of class time, right? They need to be in front of the class in minimum amount of time. Later on, I say they got to be in front of seminars or classes or teaching their own classes to get further rank, right?
Okay.
Because I want to see that. Now, if somebody can produce who's a third degree and can produce a third degree, right? And they pass the qualifications, not in the bottom half, but in the top half, or even the top 25% even, then yeah, that person probably should be considered for a promotion to a fourth degree, right? Because they're able to produce a third. Now, of course, there's always exceptions. That person might have just been a phenomenal student and they just might have picked it up by osmosis watching it through the air, right?
Yeah. YouTube.
Yeah. So there's always the exception, but to the general, I think if you can produce somebody, and even Manung Bobby Tabata, he's got his completion of the art and full instructors, right?
Yeah.
So become a full instructor, you got to produce somebody that passes.
Right. You got to get somebody to level 6, right?
Level 6, and then pass their completion of the art test.
Okay.
Which is on top of their level 6. And then, so, that's part of his quality control, and make sure that you can pass the art on, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We're saying in the lane of promotion. So if a student's running, in other words, some folks will let students promote up to a certain level. And then there's the aspect, is the head instructor or the head of the system, are they involved in all that? So some of the more common examples would be somebody's level 3, they're testing somebody for level 2. And so some folks do that.
Yep.
So what's your lens on that?
if your system is small enough and you are able to travel enough, then you can do a quality control on all tests, right? If it gets a little bit larger, you can do quality control on certain degrees, like black belt, right? But if you have a very large organization, you have to delegate, right? And therefore, you have to trust your others to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's a great point you brought up. The bigger the systems get, then exactly, whether you like it or not, you're going to be relying on others. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if you can't release that authority, or at least have those key people come back to you for like a quality control grading officer, right? They say, yep, I don't care what your rank is, but you have passed this extra little test that I'm not charging you money for. Some people do, but I'm just saying it's not costing you anything. Then it's just a quality check, right? Check in every couple of years, make sure you haven't forgotten anything, make sure you're not going off the rails, right? And then you say, yep, okay, go out and continue teaching for the next 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And 2 years is just a random number I picked. It could be 1, it could be 3. 1 seems a little short. 3 seems a little long because a lot of things can happen in 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So 2 years is a reasonable check-in time period, right? And if they want to check in every year, great, more power to them, right? That's an idea I like for the delegation purposes. Now, if you're a huge organization, the top person's going to have to do that with their high senior ranks underneath them. Those high senior ranks are going to do it with the mid ranks underneath them. The mid ranks are going to have to do it with the lower ranks underneath them, right?
Yeah, that's like, here's the thing. This is why I never, like, when I couldn't have a big system for a multitude of reasons. But one of the reasons being is exactly what we're talking about, not knowing what the hell they're doing out there or what's going on, and then have to solely rely on other people. And not to make a generalization, but it seems like when there's always, that's when the watering down or the falling apart starts to occur. And I'm not saying that always happens, but it just seems.
Well, humans are involved. So yes, it happens.
Yes, it seems to be more prevalent though when these systems get bigger and bigger, and then people leave, and then you got to restructure, and then this because there's a void left, and you don't know what's going on there now because they left. And like, I want to know who you are if you're running a group with mine, right? I'm not looking for 50 people. I'm really not. Like, I to me, smaller is better. I know what's going on. I'm in direct contact with everybody. But I imagine when these things get bigger and bigger, it's like, man, like that's got to be tough, man. Like you said, you're going to be having people under you, and then when those people are under you, they go leave to form their own system, and like, that's But people are doing it. I mean,
so as an example, in the 80s, still a color belt, a friend of mine was testing for his 4th degree Taekwondo. And there were 2 5th degrees on the board, plus the senior instructor who was 6th in ITF, or WTF, 7th in ITF, and 8th in Cheng Mu Kwan. So he had enough rank to be significantly considered for that system. One of the 5th degrees said roundhouse kicks were linear. The other one said they were circular. And one or both would always ask the question, which is it? And when you chose, that became your instructor.
Because you were automatically aligned with, right?
Okay. Well, the issues were getting more and more between them. And this guy didn't know. He didn't want either one of them to be his instructor because he was working with the most senior one, right? And so I explained to him from mathematical. I said, it depends. This looks linear. This is circular. It's the same motion. So it depends upon the frame of reference. I said, so remember this and memorize this. It depends upon the frame of reference. And then show it to them from two different angles, 90 degrees apart. And he did. They both started, and the senior said, stop. This argument ends here because he's answered it correctly. It's both. It depends upon your frame of reference. And so he finally stepped up and quality controlled his seniors underneath him, right? And got them aligned instead of trying to separate and create division.
Right.
Which allowed for more growth of the system or their organization.
I mean, yeah, some people are doing it well. I mean, they are, but you hear the horror, just from running FMA discussion these last 4 years, like you hear these horror stories. This person left, then there was a fracture, and then it's just, I just, and again, it's not so much like my students will tell you, I'm far from a control freak. I am, like Eric. I mean, I'm not. It's just that, but but at the same time, I want to know what you're doing. You know what I mean? And I want to know who you're doing it with, and I want to know what you're doing and who you know what I mean. And but I don't know. Maybe there's some control. I don't know. I try not to be, but Eric, if you're still watching, am I a control freak? Chris is apologizing for being late, which no apologies needed. I don't know. Okay, for one last handle issues. So, what can we talk about, or hopefully help folks who are watching this handling issues of those you do have teaching, regards to the capacity and the setting or format? So let's say you're getting complaints on perhaps the interaction, or let's go with interaction first. Like, see, right here, and I didn't have to pay him anything. And we got Matthew saying hello, but let's just say a communication issue, like, and you heard from a couple people. So what would you do?
So you go talk to the person one-on-one first. Ask them what's going on, if there's something weird going on in their life, things that you just may not be aware of, right? And then, it could be work, could be significant other, it could be children, it could be anything. Then once you've got them in that safe space with you, then you rip them apart. And you say, why are you doing this, right?
Yeah, why did you call him so-and-so a name when he was trying to just...
But, so and then you say, is it because you're angry over here, or is there another issue that you're not telling me about, such as what's going on between these two people, right? Yeah. So it's a roundabout way of finding more about the person, but it's also a way of seeing what their perspective is, what they're coming to you with. And then when you ask them, you also ask them a little bit nicer. So I've heard a couple of things about this and this. Is that an issue? And why is this an issue? I've had people say things, and when I talk to them directly, they deny it. But then other people will swear to me that they told them straight to their face, right? Certain things. So I can be professional when we're at the same locations, but I don't go out of my way to actively support people in that realm, right?
Right.
So
I agree, though. You have to go to the individual first, and you gotta try to get some background, what's going on, get some facts, see if there's something an outside source of stimulus that's and go from there based on what's being alleged, or what, or possibly whatever the infraction might be, pending how bad or significant it is, right? But you got to start with talking to them first. I mean, What about transmission information? In other words, I see you doing this way, but he's showing me a different way. I mean, we've all crossed that bridge.
So here's a prime example. I'm a color belt. I go to a seminar. I've got 2, 3 people from our club. So they come to me for help. Other people see this, and they're coming for me for help. Remy's teaching, and I go to say, yep, this is the technique we're going to do. And this woman who probably never trained, but maybe a week or two in the host club, says, that's not what he showed. And everybody said, what? And I said, stop. What did you see?
Yeah.
And the difference was very subtle, right? So when somebody grab your arm, slap the hand over top, and you do the center lock. And I did it this way to demonstrate. So you got a single point line to create this lock here on something, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Okay. Well, he was doing it here and cupping and locking that forearm in, which isolates this with the wrist in between. So it doesn't matter if you move this or not. He's keeping the pressure here on the wrist. And I said, we need that. So I made all of them do that. As soon as I turned from getting them going, I get grabbed by his really strong grip. And I get spun around and I'm ready to swing, right? Because I'm like, who's grabbing me?
Yeah.
And here's Remy going,
oh, no.
That was very good. You made her feel good. You have rank, but you said, what did I miss? You validated her. And then you listened to her. And
As
then
opposed
you
to saying,
adjusted.
Yeah. Like, right. You could have said, you only have a weekend. What the hell do you know?
Right. You must have missed something. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right. So that means if we hadn't adjusted, his next technique, which was to step back and drag and take them to the ground or break their wrist, then it would have been missed, right? So there was or you would have had to learn that technique as well.
Yeah.
What I was teaching wasn't wrong. It wasn't what the instructor was doing.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely a difference, right? You were showing something you wasn't doing, but it's not to say it was wrong. Yeah.
Right. So they're.
Yeah.
So I talked to myself in that case, right?
But we all been there. Like, that's not how we show. I mean, and you got to kind of work around that. And yeah, your student is your student, and I expect you to handle any issues that come up. Keep politics out. All right. Yeah.
That's good.
Can't argue that, right? So, I mean, I don't know unless you got anything else. That's kind of what I had as far as my agenda, as far as should students be able to teach. But before we do go, though, what do you got? So what do you got going on future goals, future events? What's going on in the world of Rich as far as future?
Just teaching privates, working out Sunday nights with a couple of people, semi-private students, but it's my class at the moment. I've got a Blintawak seminar camp with Datu Tim in 25, summer of 25.
Where? Up New York?
New York, yeah. So, and then there's discussions of other things going on. Nothing's confirmed at the moment.
Connecticut? I mean, we're trying to get that thing. He really wants this thing to happen in Connecticut. He's just dying to make this happen.
What dates are you thinking of?
Well, I mean, we, on the fair side, we don't get through winter here. I mean,
till June.
I mean, March is a crapshoot, and half of April is, hit or miss. So I was telling him realistically, towards the end of May, anywhere mid-May on would be good, because one of the thoughts I was having, it may be outside or park or whatever. And I told him, there's whatever you want to do. But he's kind of determined, and but he would like to see it happen next year. And so your name was mentioned in that. So yeah. So I got it. Matter of fact, but the holidays are around the corner. One of the things we plan on doing is talking about it more and getting a little more particular with it after when we get past through the holidays.
Yeah, the last week of May, I'm usually in Florida. I have a condo timeshare down there in Fort Lauderdale. So me and the wife go down. Occasionally the kids go with us. She loves just sitting on the beach. Occasionally we'll go to Key West for a day, or we'll go, check
Key
out.
West is nice, yeah.
Interior of Florida, go look at some alligators and go out on a boat and see some dolphins or something. So yeah, the last part of May is bad, but the third week would be all right.
The third week in May?
Yeah.
So anytime mid-May to third week is okay.
Yeah, because I would probably take off around May 22nd.
All right. Yeah. I mean, we could definitely work around that. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, like I said, once we get through the holidays, we're supposed to meet, talk, and see what he's got in plan. But he's pretty gung ho. So, yeah. So I told him, yeah, you want to do it, we'll make it happen. One way or another. So, but awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. This is fun. I thought it went really well, and definitely gave some insight for those who may consider having students teach, or who do have students teach, and maybe now they get a different perspective or some other things to think about.
Yeah, so to kind of summarize, everything I've said is my opinion, right?
Yeah, right. We just gave what we thought based on experience of what we've witnessed, right? That's all we can do. I mean, yeah.
If you got something that works for you, keep doing it, right?
Yeah, right. We're not saying
if a little piece of information we've shared helps, great. And then if you have follow-ups, you can reach out to one or both of us, and we can, people who watch this later as an online podcast, we can follow up with questions and answers and have discussions offline.
Yeah. I mean, but in summation, we both agree it's a good idea to have students teach for a plethora of reasons. Their own growth, spreading the art, if that's your main goal, giving them further understanding, better understanding of what's being taught. So we were both agreeing that overall, good idea to have students teach, but just have protocols in place.
Right. I think one of the examples with Menung Ted, I was working with somebody who wasn't regularly training with the Flint group. We call it our Friday night fights. So I'd head down, we'd work out for an hour and a half, 2 hours with swinging sticks. Sometimes some other people would join us. And then, we'd go eat food and have a drink, right? Well, his improvement happened a lot faster than the average person. And it showed because not only was he working with me, but he was also doing the homework on his own, right? And one of the things he asked me was, what's the most important thing I can do? And I told him, which was learn how to lean and get the body mechanics, and then to work with others so you can share it with them so you make it your own. And then when Ted asked him, I think that's what helped him feel a lot more comfortable with me teaching at a seminar level first, because I had already shown that I could reach out to other students in his own organization, club, and improve their learning rate with not only just working with them. And like one of the times I'd work with him and somebody would be like, I'd go, nice. And he goes, yeah, I didn't think I could get that. And I said, well, try it again next time. And he's like, what? I said, I'm going to tighten the door. The window's not going to be as big next time.
Right.
And he's like, what do you mean? And I go, okay. I said, I'll lock everything down. Right. And he's like, I can't do anything. I went, no, you can't. Right.
Yeah.
And I go, but I can't practice until you get better. All I can do is practice on how to teach while you're trying to get better. I said, so I'm actually benefiting by working with you and working at your time. And then you're benefiting. And then when you push me, I increase my skill set with you.
Yeah, which is also is, yeah. So, I mean, again, it's the circle, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Everybody should benefit from it, right? I mean, you know, I appreciate your candor and humility. Hope our paths cross and can share some. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Coach Danny. Awesome. But hey, if I don't talk to you, I'll be, obviously, if I don't talk to you, which I'm sure I will, have a great holiday, but I'm sure our paths will cross before then. Yeah, folks, if you do come up with thoughts or questions, either me and Rich are more available to help answer them. If something sparks your interest from this conversation and you think of something, just let one of us know. Absolutely. But yeah, so I'm going to talk to you. Have a great week and weekend, and definitely cross paths. But I appreciate you coming on. I thought it went really, really well.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, Ray, you take care.
Have a good day.
All right, folks, that wraps up 447. Who is next? Chris Nolly finally has agreed to come on, and I'm hoping that's going to be next week, but we'll confirm that. Still trying to get Miguel Ruby on. We're going to talk to him again. Hopefully he's back from the Philippines, but in the meantime, I think it's going to be this weekend. Ken, 52 Blocks, is coming on. He's going to be talking about some of the weapons he also teaches besides the actual empty hand aspects of 52. The sap, some brass knuckles, something like that. And he's got a few other neat things. Yeah, really interesting. But yeah, that should be this weekend. I'm going to solidify that hopefully by tomorrow, actually. So you folks will see, you'll see a pin an FMA discussion. But he's an interesting guy. Yeah, so it's always fun talking with him and getting his insight on different things. But yeah, look for that, though. That should be this weekend. All right, folks. Thanks to those who watched, commented, and tuned in. And we'll see you hopefully this weekend. All right.